What is the most famous place you know of with more fly fishing history than any other in the country? The east and west branch of the Delaware, the Beaver Kill, and many more of these streams in this area have some of the earliest days of dry fly fishing in the U.S. We have a Catskills guide who is going to share some of his best tips on fishing the winter and beyond on some of these famous waters of New York, so you might have a little more knowledge to apply to your home waters this year. This is the Wet Fly Swing podcast, where I show you the best places to travel to for fly fishing, how to find the best resources and tools to prepare for that trip, and what you can do to give back to the fish species we all love. How's it going today? I'm Dave, host of the Wet Fly Swing podcast. I've been fly fishing since I was a little kid, grew up around a fly shop, and have created one of the largest fly fishing podcasts in this country. I've also interviewed more of the greatest fly anglers and guides than just about anyone out there. John Francis, Trout Town guide and new drift boat owner, is going to take us through the Catskills and the seasons throughout the year. You're going to get his best tips on fishing during the winter with midges. We're going to get into some midge activity today. You're going to find out how to fish your rig even during the colder months and how to change your style a little bit. And then we're going to build the perfect trip and the perfect time to hit the Catskills this year. Plus, you're going to find out what Bug Week is all about and when you should be thinking of taking advantage of this massive hatch in this area of the Catskills. All right, here we go. The birthplace of modern fly fishing, John Francis from TroutTownFlies.com. How you doing, John?
I'm good.
Good. Great to have you on here. We're going to be heading back into the Catskills, which is, obviously a famous part of the country. Every time I have an episode on this area, it always gets me excited. About it, because I think just the history, right, of it is pretty amazing. And we're going to talk Trout Town flies. We had Joe Rist on a podcast. We'll have a link to that one as well. But how are things going? It's cold out there, right? You guys hanging in there?
Oh, yeah, it's freezing. We're not doing much fishing right now. We're just waiting for spring at this point.
Yeah. So it's been a cold year, but and right now we're kind of in the, February. We're getting into February. It's going to be March pretty soon. When does typical year for you guys in the Catskills? When are you typically getting going on, say, some of your trips?
Usually April, like right at the beginning of April, we start. That's when the season starts as well. April 1st through October 15th. And that's really when people start trickling into the shop and stuff like that. And they want to learn how to fly fish and stuff like that. But we do get some people that, if the weather permits, they want to go out in February or March.
Right. So you do. So if like somebody comes in and there's a little bit warmer weather, you would get out there and do a trip in like February, March?
Absolutely.
Okay. Nice. But this year it's been a little cold. What is the typical, if you take it to, let's just say it's February, March, what are you guys typically fishing? What does that look like? And like talk a little bit about, first maybe talk about the areas that you're at and then what you'd be fishing there.
So during that time of year, I'm usually looking at the tailwaters just because they're more like regulated by the dam, and there's probably less ice, especially up more near the dams. So I like to fish like right up as close to the dam as I can get on either the east or the west branch. And it depends on how high the water is and stuff, but just a single nymph or two nymphs with a yarn indicator has done me well over the years.
Okay. And what are the typical nymphs you might be using under the indicator?
Like a little pheasant tail or hare's ear, even a zebra midge. I've had luck with red midges with gold wire. I try. Sometimes I just get behind the vise and I throw some things together and I go try it as well, and it does me good.
Good. And is it the typical size range, kind of 18 to 24? Is that typical for midges out there?
Yeah. Sometimes you can get away like with a 16 on a curved hook, like a scud hook, but yeah, usually the smaller the better. I usually stick to 22 will be the smallest I go.
Yeah, 22.
Yeah, just
Okay.
because those big fish, it's tough to get that little tiny hook stuck in their lip the right way.
Right. Yeah, so maybe 22s. And I've heard some on that, like maybe half of the feeding that trout are doing is on midges throughout the winter. Do you find that that's pretty common on midges? Or are there other insects, other hatches, things you're fishing?
Like the pheasant tail, I feel like the nymphs live for a year or more under the water, so they're readily available. All it takes is for them to get dislodged, so you can really fish whatever you want. But I've had luck in the winter, the smaller the better. I use mostly jig hooks for my stuff. And I found that I don't get hung up on the bottom as much, and I get way better hookup ratios.
Okay. And as a jig hook, would you fish? So you could fish like you said, the zebra midge on a size 20 with a jig hook.
Yeah, I usually do the 22 on the zebra midges for the
Okay.
jig hooks, and then anything else like a 20 or 18 during the winter.
20 or 18. Nice. Well, this is a great start. We're going to get into this, I think, talking more midges, talking about, fishing on the Catskills, and we'll probably get into a little more specifics. But maybe before we get there, take us back real quick on your fly fishing. I want to talk Trout Town, but how did you first get into fly fishing, and kind of what's your first memory?
So I'm 26 now, but I started tying when I was about 6. My dad got me into it and everything, and then I think when I was about 8 or 9, we were camping up at Little Pond State Campground, and for years I'd just been practicing casting in the yard. Like my dad would put out a 5-gallon bucket, and I'd go out there. I lived right on the Ramapo River. I could have went down there and practiced, but for some reason I just stayed in the yard, and I wanted to get that little yarn piece in that bucket. And so we were at the state campground. I tell me that I'm gonna go practice my cast on the beach. And I tied a few woolly buggers and I gave them to him, and he gave me one of them back, and he said, just go cast this in the water. So I'm practicing my cast, practicing my cast. I ended up catching like an 18-inch brown trout. The first trout I ever caught on a fly rod, and
Oh, wow.
pretty much right there I was pretty much hooked. I've been into it ever since. So I have all the tying stuff and everything.
Right. When did you connect with Trout Town? Because I think they've been there a while, right? Maybe talk about that. When did that come to be with Joe and all that stuff?
So before Joe owned Trout Town, me and my dad used to go into Trout Town because he used to take me to the Willowemoc as well when I was a kid. And we used to go in and see Dennis when it was Catskill flies. And then some stuff happened. We didn't get up to the Catskills very much over the next few years. And then my dad unfortunately got cancer and passed away. And I moved back to New York to take care of my grandma. And I was gung ho to get back into fly fishing and all that stuff. And over 6 months, I'm exploring the rivers on my own. I still had my own setup and everything, and I ended up just going back to Roscoe, and because that's where my dad always took me. And I remember it as Catskill flies, but then I noticed Trout Town fly, so I started going in there, talking to Joe, and he was always the greatest guy in town to go get information or talk to, or just walk in and have a great conversation about fishing. And over the time, I was a chef, and I just hated being inside all day, even during the summer in the hot kitchen. I just wanted to be outside. So I started talking to Joe about getting my guide license, and he encouraged me to do it and told me he'd give me a shot. So I went and got my guide license, and we're going on 4 years now.
Wow.
And I work in the shop, and we're great friends. And I just did the New Jersey fly fishing show for Chowtown Flies, along with Butternut Grove, a campground that me and Joe both stay at as seasonals. So we got a great little community up in Roscoe.
Wow. That's cool. So this was was this the Edison show?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. How was that for you? Was that your first show, or had you been to those shows before?
That was my second time being to the Edison show. It was my second show ever. So last year I did it for the first time. It was cool. I booked a few trips. It was kind of like my first time doing the thing, so I was kind of like getting a feeling for it. This year I lost my voice on Saturday.
Yeah.
It was a busy weekend.
Right.
Then I helped clean up on Sunday. I actually brought home my new drift boat as
Oh,
well.
no kidding.
Yeah, from the show. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, wow. So was this something you had already purchased?
Yeah, this was something that I was planning to go get in March or February, and then the owner of the company hit me up and he was like, I'll bring it to the New Jersey show, and it saved me 12 hours of driving. So
Oh, wow. And what was the boat you picked up?
I got a Stealthcraft Bighorn skiff.
Stealthcraft Bighorn. Yeah. And Stealthcraft is pretty much the big company out on the East Coast, right? As far as drift boats.
Yeah, we saw another drift boat there. It was like East Cape Boats, and it was a carbon fiber boat, but
Oh, okay.
Stealthcraft really has they really customize your boat exactly how you want it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, they do. And what was it? It was the Stealthcraft. What was the name of it?
The Bighorn skiff.
Oh, yeah, the Bighorn. Yeah, okay. Bighorn skiff. I'm just going to plug this in, take a look at it. So So what did you, on that bighorn skiff, did you do a lot of customizing or is it pretty standard on what you got?
I actually did quite a bit of customizing, a lot of them. There's only ever the guy that built my boat was telling me there's only ever been 8 skiffs with the floor anchor. Mine was one of them.
Okay. So you got the floor anchor.
Yeah, I got a full pickles tray on one side and then a half tackle tray on the other side for easy access in and out, and then I got a tie down cooler in the front seat.
Oh, sure. Yeah, like a Yeti type one of those
Yeah.
or whatever. Yep. With like seats. Is this you got the padded seats or what does that look like? Is this
Oh yeah,
all
I got the
Yeah.
temper seats. They're nice. And then I also got the upgraded casting braces because Stealthcraft's regular casting braces are nice, but they're a little short. I got the ones that kind of buck out a little bit more and are
Okay.
a little bit more stable. But one thing I did too was I'm gonna build a little platform to put right behind the false floor, and because we with Trout Town Flies, and I know a guy, good friend named Nico. He does a lot of work with Project Healing Waters and stuff like that. And so with the cooler, I can take it out and I can actually put a platform behind the false floor and strap in a wheelchair
Oh, nice.
if if someone wanted to get out there and was having a hard time and stuff like that.
Sure, that's great. Nice. Stealthcraft. I've never rode a Stealthcraft, but I've heard lots about them, and obviously they're doing some great stuff. I know we had the founder on in an episode a while back, and he talked about the customization. You know what I mean? Like he was in trying to always do different things. He thought that was a really important part of just the evolution of boats. So that's cool. Yeah, it's a sweet looking boat. We'll put some links out in the show notes to that one. And now the drift boat, are you guys doing a mix of drift and foot, or is that kind of like 50-50, or how does that look throughout the year?
Yeah, I mean, through the shop and myself, we both do wading trips and float trips. It's just whatever the client wants. Typically, I like to take beginners wading first because it's just easier to work with them and teach them the cast and teach them how to mend and everything because I don't have to row a boat at the same time. And, it's just easier to learn standing in one spot than going down the river, I think. But, for some people, they just want to get out in the boat and have a good ride and cast the rod a few times. So that's cool too.
Yeah, that is cool. For the drift boats, what are the rivers you're fishing typically with the boat?
Yeah, typically we're just on the Delaware, the East Branch, the West Branch, and the main stem.
Okay. Yeah, and remind me again on the Delaware, are they both tailwaters or what do they have going there?
Yeah, they're both tailwaters. They come out of the Pacton Reservoir and the Cannonsville Reservoir.
Okay, so they're both tailwaters, and these are fairly, I guess, obviously big enough to run a drift boat. What does it look like when you're drifting down the river? What does your day look like? Is this something where you're fishing out of the boat most of the day, or are you getting out, in and out?
Some people are just like, we tell people that sometimes they don't even have to wear their waders, that we just float down the river. Like on the West Branch, you can really do that. Just float down the river and you can park the boat. The guide will get out and walk it through a riffle and you can stay in the boat. But if you're floating the East Branch, it's a little bit of a smaller river, a little tighter. And those spots you might have to get out and get around some spots, or it might be smarter to get out and walk down a little bit and fish a hole before you row into it. But a typical day on the river is, if it's a full day, you put in around 8:30, 9 o'clock, depending on the time of year. We're usually getting into fish pretty early, and if it's prime time, it can be an all day thing.
Right, it can be. Okay, and we could talk more about some of the drifts and things like that. But let's take it back on. So Joe, so basically, yeah, you have this connection through your dad and through the family of that area. You come back, and you're kind of, it sounds like you're all in on the fly fishing. Is that how it feels to you? How does it feel now that you've got 4 years in and looking back on the stuff you're doing with the cooking and things like that?
Oh, it feels like I don't ever want to be back in the kitchen,
Yeah.
Like having the river as an office is like the greatest feeling. One thing my dad always told me was, he said, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And
Yeah.
like Joe gives me a check for guiding or whatever, and I'm surprised still. I'm like, I can't believe I get paid to do this. It's awesome.
That is cool.
So I see myself doing this for as long as possible.
Nice. And is the Catskills, I mean, it is obviously probably maybe the most famous, definitely one of the most famous areas in the country. What is it to you? Why do you feel that out there? Like, the history and stuff, do you know a little about the history? Is that something you're kind of up on, or does it just feel like just any other river?
No, I definitely feel the history because, I've met Joan Wolfe and, Tom Mason and a lot of Ed Van Put, a lot of these people that are, some of them passed and, some of them still around. And the history is definitely there. There's people talk about it all the time in the Catskills. That's if you come fly fishing there, your guide is definitely going to tell you a story or two about the old days.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And do you know some of those stories? How do you, when you have somebody on your trip, are you talking about some of this since you're a little bit younger, or are you kind of creating your own stories? What does that look like?
Oh, I have some of my own stories about, funny things that happen on the river and stuff. But, I think Joe mentioned in the podcast about the train that
Oh yeah.
broke down on the river and they had to
Right.
put the trout in the river.
Yep.
I always tell that story because I think that's a great story
Yeah, that
about the
is.
rainbow trout and everything like that.
Yep. Right. That was the train crashing back in the, whatever it was, 100, 200 years ago, or whatever, 100 years ago. And yeah, Rainbow were just dumped into the Delaware.
Yeah, right into the Delaware.
Right. And now to this day, you still find, and that's the reason why there are rainbows in the Delaware.
Yeah, I mean, as far as we know, some places put rainbows in ponds and stuff, and during some floods, some of them may have gone into the system, but when you hook a rainbow in the Catskills, it's not like hooking a rainbow out in Pennsylvania or New Jersey or something like that. Like, it's an
It's different.
absolute battle.
Right.
It's really different. Like, I go to Pulaski and I fish for steelhead every once in a while, and it really does feel like just a small steelhead. It's a lot different than any other rainbow I've caught anywhere else.
Trout Routes is the most comprehensive mapping app for trout anglers. With over 50,000 trout streams, 350,000 access points, public land maps, and more, Trout Routes is the #1 resource for navigating, researching, and exploring trout streams. You can download Trout Routes for free in the App Store today. Just search for Trout Routes on your phone and take your exploration to the next level. That's Trout Routes, TROUTROUTES. Grand Teton Fly Fishing is a premier guide service and fly shop that has access to some of the most coveted rivers and lakes in western Wyoming. Their simple goal is to share their valued resource and have you experience a native cutthroat trout rising to a single dry fly in the shadows of the Tetons. You can check out Grand Teton right now at grandtetonflyfishing.com. Let them know you heard of them through this podcast. Yeah, it's interesting, the story. I just heard another one from, we were doing an episode on the White River in Arkansas, and I didn't realize this, but they stocked that. The brown trout were stocked, way back in the day as well, and now it's, it's taken time, but now it's this amazing fishery, that's grown up. And so there's lots of these examples, case studies of great, things that have happened over the years. For you, let's take it back into, again, that wintertime. Let's just say it's February, kind of in late February into March, and you're out there in the river. Talk about that. Let's just say it's not too cold. You're able to fish. What does that look like? Are you getting started early in the morning, later? First of all, where do you get started? And what might you be fishing that time of year?
So during that time, I'm gonna probably get to the river as soon as that temperature starts to rise. The air temperature starts to rise. That's when I want to be getting in the water and stuff like that. I'm going to start off fishing like the real slow, like right as from like, I want to say like the middle of the pool up to the head of the pool, right in that slow water. And then work my way into the fast water because fish will still sit in the fast water even in the winter. But typically I'll fish, like an 18 pheasant tail or hare's ear, prince or something to get it down. And then a small zebra midge or even a smaller pheasant tail behind that. And then, just depending on the depth of the water, I get it within a foot or within 6 inches of the bottom if I can, if I know the river pretty well and the pool I'm fishing. And then, throughout the day, I don't spend a whole day in one spot. I'll spend 2, 3 hours, really fish over an area, and then I'll move and then go to another spot. And if I'm lucky, I'll get the 3 spots in one day. I feel like winter fishing is really about moving around and stuff like that. You want to find where the fish are. If you find one fish, it's liable that there's a few more there.
Right. So if you get some action, that's some positive reinforcement. So stay there. Don't leave necessarily right away.
Yeah, I mean, I've caught like 4 or 5 fish right out of the same spot in the winter sometimes after all day of moving around, walking up, walking down, and then you just find out where they're holding for that moment.
Right. When you come up to that pool, if you're starting in the middle of the pool, working up, where are you fishing? How do you know where the fish are holding in that pool? Are you looking for a certain structure? What are you looking for?
So I fish close to me, and if the river's clear, I look for weed beds on the bottom. I fish next to them, not over top of them. It's because the fish will sit right next to those weed beds. Large rocks, put the nymphs right next to them, around them, both sides if you can. Sometimes if you see a current break behind a rock, this fish will sit right behind the rocks during the winter because it's just an easy spot to sit. They don't have to expend a lot of energy. And as soon as something floats by, they just swoop over and grab it. Found a lot of luck doing that. And then another big thing in the winter too is streamers. If you're not having luck on nymphs, don't be scared to throw a 3 or 4 inch streamer out there, just on the to the other bank if it's a small river, and just twitch it back across. Like let it swing in just small little strips. I've caught some pretty nice winter fish doing that as well.
Okay. Yeah. And you would be throwing on, what would be an example of a streamer you might fish in the winter?
So I tie a lot of my own. I guess you could call it like a version of like a sex dungeon or something. But I use like laser dub for the head, and I use a lot of Arctic fox. But I kind of wrap the body like a woolly bugger with like palmer chenille and stuff like that. But it's got great movement, and they're usually articulated. But I'll cut the back hook off.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, just because usually I don't want to kill any fish, so. If
Right.
they if I get a short strike, I let it sit, and then I give it a few more twitches. If he comes back and eats it, I'm glad. If not, then
No big deal.
no big deal.
Yeah, right. And yeah, so that is on the articulates. You've got this hook at the very back. Do you find, I guess guys are fishing those. How are they avoiding hooking those fish deep with those flies?
Well, sometimes, usually I've noticed when a trout eats a streamer, they hit it from the side, you know? So they won't sometimes, don't get me wrong, they'll come up from the back and just engulf the whole thing. And that's usually when you have your deep hook problems. But most of the trout, I feel like they like hit it from the side, and if there is two hooks on it, you'll get both hooks in the outside of the mouth. And then the problem I have is they'll start spinning in the net and doing all this stuff and get all wrapped up, and their eyes start bulging out of their heads, and I don't
Yeah,
like that. So
that's not good.
I've noticed with the one hook, it keeps that back end like free. So you can kind of just like keep some tension on the line, and if he starts to spin, you can just keep some tension and let the line spin, and he won't get all wrapped up and stuff like that.
That's great. Yeah, that's good advice. I agree. I think, yeah, you got two hooks in there. So it's bad enough with one hook in a net, but yeah, I get two and it can be messy. Okay. So that's a good tip on the streamers. And then, so when you're nymphing, talk about the leader setup real quick. How does that look? You mentioned the strike indicator. Talk about your
Mhm.
terminal tackle end and all that stuff.
So I like to use an Airflow Polyleader Plus on my rods. It's like I call it an extension of your fly line down to a tippet ring. And then for my nymph rig, I'll put like, let's say, depending on the river level, like anywhere from 2 to 4 feet, maybe even 5 feet of 4X. Tie a triple surgeon's knot, probably down to 5 or 5.5X to my largest fly. And then I'll put that little fly off the back of that,
Gotcha.
right to the hook bend with usually 5.5 or 6X fluorocarbon.
And like 18 inches, something like that.
Yeah, usually like 12 to 18 inches.
12 to 18. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, and you might use maybe a bigger hook on your lead fly and then trailing off of that, just a smaller emerger or something like that, or another nymph.
Yeah, usually two nymphs,
Two nymphs.
you
Okay.
know, because I like to fish the pools and stuff, but I feel like the deeper pools, slower moving pools is better for the streamer stuff because the fish don't have. If you're floating a nymph through a pool that's just super slow, they got forever to look at it. And they might be hungry enough to where they eat it, but I like to fish like the heads with the nymphs because it's kind of just moving a little bit faster, and they're more inclined to just look up, see it, and eat it in my eyes.
Gotcha. Okay. And how would you maybe describe when you're in that pool? Talk about how you're fishing. Are you casting for the most part upstream, or talk about, how you're fishing the indicator?
Well, it really all depends on how the river is, flowing in front of me, if there's current breaks or if there's different seams and stuff like that. But typically, I'll be like at the head of a pool, and there'll be a back eddy that I'm standing in or some of the sort, something like that. And I want to get those nymphs down. So I do cast almost on like a up if all the water's uniform and flowing the same, I'll cast like on the upstream just a little bit. If across the river's 12 o'clock, I'll probably cast at 11 or 10:30. And then I'll just try to give it a big mend, get all that line behind my indicator. and then I'm letting my nymph sink, and I'm feeding my line out as it goes down. I probably let it get to about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and I let it swing just a little bit. Kind of have gotten fish on the swing in the winter, and then after that, I just put it back up, and I start short, obviously, and I work my way out. I'm not going to cast across the river on my first cast.
Right. How many feet, if you had a good water in front of you, how far away from you would you be casting?
I'll start right in front of me, like
Yeah, a couple
10
feet.
feet,
Yeah,
like
10 feet.
right
Okay.
in front of me, and then work to 15, and then 20, and then work my way out. I have caught fish right at my feet before.
Right. Okay.
You know?
And that's why the indicator is pretty nice, right? Because it suspends the flies, so you have weight. If they're getting down, then you can just watch that indicator, and it allows you to, like you said, make that big mend. So then they sink down. What is the weight? How are you getting them down? Are these like tungsten flies,
Yeah,
or yeah,
I use tungsten beads on
yeah,
my jig flies. Yeah.
yeah? So no split shot or anything, just
No,
tungsten
no.
beads. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. And you're getting it down there. And then as you're drifting it, you mentioned kind of 10 to, 1 p.m., something like that, or, in that range.
Yeah.
But
I mean, if you can get farther down, if you're getting a good drift, sometimes I'll let it go down even farther. But, when you're fishing straight down from you, it can be hard to set the hook because the fish is facing you. I always tell people you want to, especially like all my clients, if we're in the boat, if we're wade fishing, anything, you want to set the hook, except for a dry fly, then you want to go straight up. But if you're nymphing, you want to set the hook the way the water's flowing. You want to go with the water because the fish is always 90% of the time going to be facing upstream when he eats your flies. So you want to pull that hook back into his face. You don't want to
yep.
pull upstream and pull it out of his mouth.
Yep. Love that. Yeah. Set the hook the way the water's flowing. So, and do you typically set the hook? Where would your rod tip? Would it be lower or higher? Does that matter?
At an angle, not straight up, but not to the side, just like at that perfect angle, like right in between there.
Yeah. Right in between. Okay. That's awesome. So that's another good tip. So setting the hook is big, and on the indicator, you pretty much are just watching the indicator, and as soon as that you see something that changes, you're setting the hook.
Yeah, if you're taking the bottom too much, that's why I like the indicator too, because it's very adjustable. And if you're taking the bottom too much, you want your flies to drift just above the bottom. You don't want them to be tick, 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 because that does make noise and stuff. And when metal hits rocks, I feel like that does scare away fish. So I always, I don't like to take bottom ever. I like to
Yeah.
be just above.
Yeah. And how do you find that? Is that just a trial and error, or like
Yeah,
if you didn't know it? Yeah.
if you don't know the river, it's just going to be trial and error. But if you know your pools and the flows and stuff like that, it can be pretty easy to just slap your leader and your rig together and, get out there and adjust it once or twice and be good to go.
Okay. Nice. So that is a little bit on your setup for fishing, winter midges. What are, as you get in, you said April things start getting, what's going on in April? Is that just the weather is changing typically and getting nicer out there? But talk about the transition from the winter into more of that spring kind of range.
Yeah, so sometimes April can be pretty cold. We can still have snow. But typically, like anytime, like toward the end of the month, even if it's a cold winter, it will start getting those 50-degree days, and then the Quill Gordons, and you get Hendricksons, and even some caddis, even the midges will start hatching too. You'll see them on the water. But typically, your fishing for dry flies would be during the warmest part of the day, and but then it opens up the morning and the even more in the morning for the nymphing because those nymphs get active during the morning. They start moving to where they want to hatch. If they're in the riffles, they're going to move to the pools and stuff like that. And that's where the fish will start moving around as well. They won't be so holed up in their winter lies.
Right, right, right. Okay. And what are people, is there a hatch or a time of year that people are really, you're hearing more people wanting to come, to the Catskills for, or a river? What would be the kind of the top river do you think you hear most requests for?
That's tough because it's very based on the time of year, but it really starts with the Hendrickson hatch.
Yeah,
You know,
Hendrickson.
yeah. There's been times where I've been on the Willowemoc and literally a blanket hatch. Like you can cast your fly out there and you would not know which one is yours. And the fish won't. And it's crazy because the fish aren't even eating them. There could be 100,000 floating down the river, and
Right,
the fish will eat an ant over the 100,000 Hendricksons floating past them.
right.
You know.
Yeah. And the Hendrickson, so that is, and what is that hatch typically? When does that usually start?
So that's usually in like April, depending. Like last year, we had a warm spring and stuff. We were seeing quill gordons in February, which was crazy. So like, and most of the hatches happened 2 weeks early last year. But with it being so cold this winter, if it stays like this and we get a cooler spring, I'd expect stuff to be more on time this year. Sometime in April. I can't give you an exact week or date just based on the variables, but sometime in April is when the Hendricksons will start.
Okay. Well, let's take it to, let's say somebody was calling right now. They hadn't ever been to the Catskills. They want to fish it. What are you, if they don't know anything about it, what are you telling them? Let's just say I'm looking at doing a trip. What would you tell me, or what questions would you ask?
So, well, I'm gonna say, like, are you looking for a half day or a full day?
Yeah, yeah. Let's say we're working for, let's just say we're looking for more of a few days. We're going to be out there for over like 2 or 3 days over the week.
Okay, over the week. So
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna tell you to come in late May
Okay. Late May.
because like late May, early June, there's this week I like to call it bug week.
Yeah. Bug
And
week. Nice.
there's just like everything's hatching. You have all your big bugs. You have your blue sedges, your March browns, green drakes, ISOs are starting, and it could just be a ton of fun. Just on big dries at big heads. Most of the fish are looking up and they're eager to eat. It can be a blast all day long.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, bug week. That's perfect right there. So
If you're into dry fly fishing,
yeah,
that would
dry
be your
fly.
best time.
Yeah, that's right. We are. Yeah, let's say dry. So late May, early June, and so let's take it there. Typical. I know there's lots of variation, but in your typical year, what might that look like? Are you getting started early then? Is the heat is starting to hit then, or is that a little bit later?
It could be pretty warm around then, but like last year it was pretty perfect. It was like late last week of May, first week of June, and we had our cool mornings still, and we had the warmer afternoons to bring the hatches out, and it was some great fishing. I caught a lot of very nice fish in that last year, and my clients also put some great fish in the boat on the main stem. I had a first time client out in the boat, and they were two veterans, and he put a 22-inch brown trout in the boat on a March brown.
On the surface?
Yep, on the surface on a March brown.
And was this while you were drifting down the river?
Yeah, we were on the main stem.
The main stem Delaware. And where does the main stem Delaware? Where would you be without giving any secrets? I'm not sure if there's any secrets out there, but where would somebody be floating? Like what's the range? Is there a town nearby? What would be the closest town?
The main stem really it starts in Hancock, New York.
Yeah.
So that's where the East Branch and the West Branch meet.
Okay.
And then that right there, it kind of marks the start of the national park,
Oh, okay.
the upper Delaware Scenic and Recreational River. So it's like a national park for like 60 miles down the river. It goes through Callicoon, goes through Damascus, all the way down to Port Jervis and stuff like that. But we typically fish the upper part, down to Damascus for trout and stuff like that.
Down to Damascus.
Yeah. And then, once it gets hotter in the summer and stuff, there's a lot of smallmouth in the river that you can even get stripers, walleye. I caught a pickerel on the main stem in December one year.
Huh. A pickerel.
Yeah, a pickerel.
Wow. Fishing for trout.
Fishing for trout.
There you go. That's pretty funny. Nice. And
Well, I had just gotten a new boat. I was more floating down the river just to float down the river, but we were throwing streamers for fun.
gotcha. And so the Delaware kind of from Hancock to Damascus, it kind of splits Pennsylvania and New York. Is that what it's doing for the most part?
Yeah. So it almost starts like right past Hale Eddy Bridge, where it becomes the PA New York border. So the West Branch will be the PA New York border for a while, and then till it gets down to the Delaware main stem, where the East Branch comes in. Then the main stem is the border pretty much all the way down.
Oh, okay. I see. Gotcha. And that's the big water. So for the most part, you're floating from Hancock down with that. Is that the main area you're using your drift boat in?
Yeah, I mean, well, if the flows are good on the West Branch, we'll float the West Branch. If the East Branch is tougher to float with drift boats just because of its size and the typical flows we have on it during the summer, it can be pretty low in the riffles and stuff like that. Hard to get through. But in the spring, the East Branch is very floatable. The West Branch is usually floatable year round, except for right now, obviously, because probably most of it's frozen. But yeah, usually the West Branch and the main stem are pretty floatable year round for bass, trout,
Oh, right.
stuff like that. I know people on the lower Delaware do walleye. In the early summer too, we get a lot of shad in the main stem.
Oh, shad, right.
Yeah, a lot of shad. And it's funny too because they'll come up and eat a dry fly.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, so you have a mixture. It's a Delaware, right? It's a huge river that flows through all the way. I mean, I'm not sure how many miles, but right, all the way out to the ocean.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be wrong, but I'd guess like 150 or more miles. You know, it's a long river.
Yeah. And is it a big river up near Hancock where it comes together, the confluence? How big is that river, like width-wise, would you say?
Mm, I'd say like right where it comes together, probably like 50, 60, maybe 70 yards. You
Oh,
know,
70 yards. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's
So
pretty
yards.
wide. Like
Yeah.
the first hole we call it Bard Parker or Junction Pool. And it's a deep pool. It could be 15, 20 feet deep, and you know, it's probably 200, 300 yards long.
Mm.
It's a pretty long pool. Most of the pools and on the main stem are like that. It'll be a very long, deep pool, and then you'll get to a riffle section or a little braid section, and then it'll just be ahead to a long, deep pool again. And you have that pretty much the whole way down.
Oh, it is. So not a lot of riffles, just lots of pools. Good pool
Yeah.
habitat.
Yeah, but the riffles some of the riffles are fairly long, and you have a good run right before the pool, and those are very, very good spots to fish during the summer.
Okay. Yeah. And are you seeing more drift boats out there, or have there always been boats out there floating?
There's always been boats out there. I'd say last year though, the main stem got pretty warm and it was tough to fish for trout. So the main stem got or not the main stem, the west branch got pretty congested for a little while, but you know, everyone out there is pretty nice, you know. We all for the most part know each other and we're all respectful. We give each other space and you know, we all have a good time out there, you know.
Right, right. Yeah, no reason to battle it out, right, with
Yeah,
the other
no.
anglers. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I have no problems with anyone out there. We all want everyone to have a great day fishing.
Step into the world where the river whispers and the fishing is nothing short of legendary. This year, I ventured into the heart of eastern Idaho's Yellowstone Teton territory where the fish were larger than life and the waters held the secrets of the best fly fishing out west. Yellowstone Teton territory is not just a location, it's a gateway to adventures that will etch themselves into your memory. With crystal clear rivers like the Henry's Fork and the South Fork of the Snake, and enough lakes to keep you going all year long, make your way to Yellowstone Teton territory and embark on a journey to one of North America's finest fly fishing destinations. Whether you're planning your trip now or just dreaming it up, the YTT is where those dreams turn into reality. Remember, Yellowstone Teton territory. That's Teton, Teton. It's time to experience Eastern Idaho for yourself and support this podcast at the same time. So that's kind of some of the Delaware. And then if you're doing a walk and wade, where are some of those rivers you guys are hitting more of?
So more of the walking ways so like the Beaver Kill and the Willowemoc will do a ton of that in the spring. But once the water gets warmer, we'll walk and wade on the east branch a lot, the west branch even. Not so much the main stem because it's just such a big river. I have done it a few times just for clients that wanted to go wade fish the main stem. But you know, it's a big river. It's tough to wade it, you know.
Right. Not easy. What is the Beaver Kill versus the Willowemoc? Are they similar at all or a lot different?
So they're similar to each other in the fact that they're freestones, meaning that they flow out of the mountains based on rainfall and stuff like that. The Willowemoc is a bit smaller in size and has I'd say less water, but they're both great rivers. They're both like similar structured rivers, you know, as in riffles and pools and stuff like that. The upper Beaver Kill can be a ton of fun to fish, like behind the Roscoe Motel and up to the bridge and stuff like that. You have some chances to get some pretty decent sized fish too out of some pretty small water, you know, because all of it connects to the Delaware. And some of the stuff I've read about how the trout in the Delaware migrate is pretty fascinating. You know, how far they travel to spawn. And, you know, sometimes they'll find a fish in the Beaver Kill and then they'll find it in the East Branch later on. It's pretty cool how far they go and stuff like that. So,
These are the brown trout and rainbows?
yeah, the rainbows travel really far. Like during the spring and summer, you'll catch big rainbows in the main stem in the East Branch, and then up on the upper Beaver Kill, like for example, at the Beaver Kill State Campground or Covered Bridge, during the fall and stuff, you might not see one rainbow. But then you go fishing there in the spring and you're catching these 18, 20-inch rainbows because they ran all the way up there to spawn.
Yep. Right. Wow. And you mentioned the bug week. So would the Willowemoc be a river that you could hit in late May, early June, end of June? That would that be bug week there as well?
Yeah. So with the tailwaters, it's a little different too because of the temperature of the water. Like it's not like the free zones. The free zones will be a lot more fluctuation in temperature. So it's still bug week. You might not get, it might be more localized to like areas. Like you might get good March browns on like the lower half of the Willowemoc and stuff like that, and different parts of the Beaver Kill, but it might not be like as prolific as the lower half of the West Branch might see a crazy hatch for like a few days in a row. And then on the Willowemoc, you might get 1 or 2 good days of a hatch, and then it might peter out pretty quickly.
Right. Pretty quick. Okay. And so if we were coming there in late May, early June, let's just say the last week in May, what would be the first, if we had a few days to fish, would we mix it up on a little bit or start on the tailwater? What would be a good program to do there?
So first off, I would go to Trout Town and ask Joe what's been happening in the area and stuff like that because it's different every year. But if I'm just basing it on last year, the West Branch was pretty insane for the hatches, and the upper main stem was on fire. I had just started doing my float trips last year, so I was on the boat a ton in the beginning of the year. But the times I did fish the Beaver Kill and the Willowemoc, it was pretty good fishing. But the tailwaters is always my favorite spot.
Okay. So the tailwater's just more kind of reliable, like you said, that they're more consistent for the most part.
Yeah.
Okay. So it'd be good to start off, and I could see a maybe day one you're starting off in the West Branch, maybe, and you would be floating it. You could float the West Branch.
Yeah, you can float the West Branch. Personally, if I'm fishing by myself, I like waiting,
Yeah.
just because,
Yeah.
you really get to pick apart the pool, You float through a pool in 30 minutes and then you don't see it again. But if you're standing at a pool for an hour and a half, 2 hours, you might see that big fish pop his head up or something happen and you're like, that's where I want to be. So personally, I like waiting more, but it is fun to hop in the boat and go down the river with friends and, catch a few fish here and there and, just have a good time. But if I'm by myself,
You're waiting. You're
yeah.
waiting. Yeah. How do you choose between, whether you're going to be on the boat that day or foot? Does it just depend on who the client is?
Yeah, it depends on what the clients want to do. Sometimes if the water's really high and stuff like that, and they have a wade trip booked, I'll just compensate and be like, "Hey, listen, same price. You want to go out on the boat today? I think it'd be a bit better, and we'll do that."
Yep. Right. So mix it up depending on the conditions there. Okay. And then so the Willowemoc is that a trip to the East Branch?
That's a tributary to the Beaver Kill. So there's actually another junction pool, and it's in Roscoe, and that's a famous pool. They call it. It's famous for the two-headed trout because they say a trout traveled all the way up the Beaver Kill and couldn't decide whether to go up the Beaver Kill or up the Willowemoc, so it grew two heads.
Right. And so that's the Beaver Kill. So the Beaver Kill, and then that flows into what does the Beaver Kill flow into?
The Beaver Kill flows into the East Branch down at what we call Jaws, and it has a beautiful eagle viewing site there with a nice gazebo, and there's always eagles up in the trees there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, gotcha. So Willowemoc and then at Roscoe, is that the Beaver Kill flowing through there?
Yeah, that's the Beaver Kill and the Willowemoc meeting.
Oh, meeting. Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
right in Roscoe. And then that forms the lower Beaver Kill, which is what we call it. And then that flows to the East Branch, and that forms the lower East Branch, and that goes to the main stem.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And then it's okay. Right. So there's a lot. So you mentioned, so we talked the East Branch, the West Branch, the Willowemoc, the Beaver Kill. Any other streams we're missing that you're hitting throughout the year here?
So, kind of a secret of mine, but I do love the never sink in the winter.
Oh, the Never Sink. Yeah.
It is a tailwater. It is, regulated like the East Branch and the West Branch. And I just love it in the winter. It's just so pretty. The big rivers are pretty, but you have some of those trees that come over the river and you get the snow. And most of the time you're the only guy on the river. And it's just so peaceful. I like fishing those small streams in the winter the freestones can be really tough in the winter. Don't get me wrong, you can catch fish on them and stuff like that, but Neversink's always been a special river to me. My dad always used to take me there. We used to go to the gorge and stuff like that. So I just love being down in there.
Okay, Neversink. And the Neversink, where is that? How is that one connected to these other ones we've been talking about?
So it's connected because it's part of the aqueduct system for all the reservoirs. So all the water goes through these long tubes that go down to New York City for the drinking water and everything. So it's classified as a tailwater, and it does flow. The Neversink flows into the Delaware River down by Port Jervis. So there are wild trout running up into the Neversink, and it's always been labeled as a great trout stream. That's actually, if I'm correct, I think that's where the first dry fly was ever had,
Oh, really?
was ever used, was on the Neversink. Yeah.
Right, there you go.
It's a famous dry fly river. In recent years, it's been labeled as tough to catch fish on dry flies in that river, just for the reason everyone goes there and uses them and stuff like that. I will say I've had more luck using nymphs in the Neversink than dry flies, but I have caught some pretty decent fish on dries as well.
Okay. All right. So yeah, the Neversink definitely would be good. Another big one to add to the list. And is that far? Are all these within striking distance of like, if let's just say we were coming there to stay, where would be a good place that you would like location to stay as far as town, cities, stuff like that?
So, Roscoe is pretty much right in the middle,
Yeah,
but
Roscoe. Okay.
Butternut Grove is the campground me and Joe stay at as seasonals during the year, and it's about 6 miles more toward the Delaware. So I love that campground because it's literally right in the middle of everything. You can get up to the Delaware and to the West Branch in 30 minutes. You can get to the Neversink in 30 minutes. And then the East Branch, the Willowemoc, and the Beaver Kill are all within 15 minutes. It's really a great spot to camp. They have cabins, RVs, and all that good stuff. Bring your camper, tent camp, whatever you need. Yep. So I love staying there just because it's so easy to get everywhere from there.
Yeah, Butternut. Okay, that's awesome. Butternut Grove. Yeah, right off the highway, so that's easy.
Yeah, right off the highway, store your boat there, all that good stuff.
And it's on the Beaver Kill.
Yeah, right on the Beaver Kill, and I will say that's a great pool right behind the campground in the spring.
That's another bonus.
Yeah, get some great rainbows there in the spring.
Okay, so yeah, another bonus. So you're right there. That would be amazing to camp right on the Beaver Kill. Is access pretty good out there as far as like where would people find out where they could go walk and wade, stuff like that?
So, Old 17 is the old highway that used to go along all the rivers and stuff like that. And if you just drive along that, you'll see the big brown state fishing signs
Okay.
that you can park at, and you'll see the parking lot. You really can't miss it. There are a few spots like on the Upper East Branch where it's just a pull off. You're not going to see a sign, but it's an obvious pull off. Pull off there, you'll find the state sign for the footpath for the anglers, and then usually, as long as you're in the river, you're good. As long as you're within that high water mark, you can pretty much walk wherever you want. There are a few spots where there is private water, like the Upper Beaver Kill above the 206 bridge. Most of it's private for clubs and stuff like that. But like on the Delaware system and like that, most of it is accessible if you're willing to walk.
It is. Okay. Well, that's great. That's great to hear. Okay. So lots of opportunities there. Well, let's start to take it out of here. We have a little segment. This is kind of our brand shout out segment, and I'm sure you probably had some good brands being at the show recently that you connected with. But today, this is presented by Pescator on the Fly. They have this unique fly rod, which is a 6-piece. One of their rods is a 6-piece fly rod. It was interesting because when we talked to them, it sounds amazing because it's a little bit shorter than the 4-piece, so you can throw it in your backpack, like a normal small backpack. It'll fit in there. And I just heard that Canada, I guess, is restricting travel. So now when you go there, you can't carry on a rod. It's, you know what I mean? It's got to be small enough. So those old 4-pieces now have to be checked baggage. So that's a good tip on. So we're going to give a shout out to Pescator on the Fly today. But for you, what is your? Maybe talk about that. What are some of the brands you're using? Do you have kind of rod, reel, other gear brands that you kind of really love you want to give a shout out to?
So I will say this last year, I picked up some Douglas rods.
Oh, yeah.
They're a New York company.
Sure.
And I'm very happy with them. Great action. Their warranty is second to none. I had a client pretty much just accidentally step on a rod, break it right in half. I had a new piece on my doorstep in 3 days.
Oh, wow.
And I will say, no offense to any other companies, but I've never had that before. It's always taken way longer than that. So Douglas is, I'll definitely be getting more rods from them and recommending and using them in the future. Another one, Bahio sunglasses, love them. I've been using Walmart shades for the last few years, and then
Yeah.
finally stepped it up, got them, and the difference is impeccable.
Yeah.
Like as a guide, you're telling your clients there's a fish right there, and they got their Walmart shades on, they have no idea where the fish is,
Right.
and I'm like, it's swimming right there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, Bahio's a great brand, and I love their sunglasses.
That's perfect. Perfect. Yeah. But and are you more of a glasses or plastic lens?
So I got the first pair. I was being kind of cheap, got the plastic lenses. And then I was at this West Branch like show for next year. Kind of all the companies come together and they show you what they're presenting for next year. And I tried some glass lenses out, and it was it looked better. The colors were better and everything. So I got a pair of glass lenses, and I hate to say I haven't put the plastic ones back on since.
No. Yeah. So you like they're
So
little.
I'd say the glass is worth the extra money.
Yeah. And it's not that much heavier, right?
No, it's
Than,
not at all heavier,
yeah.
and the great part is that they don't scratch. My plastic ones, even though I have the lanyard thing on them, I drop them, stick them in my fly bag, after I get off the boat and stuff like that, and they get all scratched up. The glass ones, I've done the same thing, and they're still perfect. I've had no problems.
Yeah. That's perfect. Good. Okay. So we got our couple of gear shouts out there. And did you see at the show when you were in Edison, did you see a ton of, I guess everybody was there. Was that a pretty good show?
Oh yeah, it was great. We saw Kevin from Douglas. That was awesome talking to him. Billy from Bahio. He's a great guy. I love fishing with him.
Uh-huh.
Joe came down to the show on Friday and said hi to everyone. It's always cool seeing him there. It's always fun talking to everyone at the shows. I like connecting with people, trying to get people up to the Catskills. I can't believe it. It's 2 hours away from Edison. A lot of people
Wow.
come to the show from Edison. It's like 2.5 hours, and not many people have been up to the Catskills or even
Uh-huh.
Roscoe
Wow. That's
or even
amazing.
heard about it. And, it's the
Jeez.
birthplace of American fly fishing.
Right.
So I really, I love pushing it. And I'm thinking about doing another show in March in Lancaster, PA. So, I really want to get people up to the Catskills, or at least inform them about the history, just come up and check it out. It's a great place. It's awesome fishing. It's so beautiful.
Yep. That is amazing.
But yeah, and I will say I love birds, especially birds of prey, and it's in New York and the Catskills. I'm pretty sure it has the second most bald eagles in the US.
Oh, it does.
I'm pretty sure, yeah, other
Yeah.
than Alaska.
Sure. Birds of prey. So you see lots of eagles and other birds of prey?
Yeah, eagles, hawks, we've even seen some golden eagles this last year, which
Yeah.
is surprising because they're starting to make a comeback, which is great to see. And,
Right.
you're out at night, if we're out mousing, you'll hear the owls hooting in the woods and stuff. And it's a surreal experience. It's a lot of fun.
Do you consider yourself like a birder?
I don't know. I like them. I don't,
Yeah.
you know,
You don't have all the birding books and like go and get nerding out on it like fully.
no, not really nerding out. I got the bug books. I nerded out on the bugs when I was learning about all the hatches and stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah.
The birds. I have the bird books. I just like seeing them in the
Yeah.
wild. And, it's
Yeah.
great.
Are you able to? I was listening to somebody recently as like a friend of a friend, but they were saying they were looking for a specific owl, and I can't remember the species, but he hadn't found one in years, like 6 years, and then he just happened to find this owl in a neighborhood. It was like literally in like a cul-de-sac, and the guy was out there with his binoculars, being like, "Oh my God, that's the first time he's ever seen the owl." Is that something where you're seeing new species you don't know of, and out there, or is it typical you're
Yeah,
seeing? Yeah.
sometimes we saw a green heron last year, and I've never
Oh yeah,
seen
green heron.
I've never seen any of those on the Delaware. Might have just missed them, but last year I started to notice them. And then the golden eagles, that was something that I have not seen in the Catskills until like these last 2 years. Well, the 2 years ago I saw one, and then this last year I had 3 or 4 or 5 sightings, and it was pretty cool.
That is cool. Yeah, it's the more you hear about New York, and it is surprising that more of those people down in New Jersey aren't making it up there, because it seems like the more you hear about it, the bigger it gets, right? Because it's such a big state and there's so much to do, and New York City, of course, is totally the opposite. It feels like than the most of the state. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Most of the state is this other is what you're talking about, right? These amazing national parks and all that.
I used to live in Cincinnati, Ohio. My parents were divorced, and that's where I went to high school and stuff like that. Before I moved back out to New York, I still tied and fished out there and everything. But, I was telling everyone, I was like, I got to move back to New York. And, oh, New York City, New York City. I'm like, no, not New York City. And,
Right, New York City.
it's crazy how many people think New York is just New York City. Not many
Yeah.
people know about New York State
No,
and upstate and all the
no.
great fishing, steelhead, salmon.
Right.
You can do whatever you want here, and it's
Yeah.
amazing. There's so many great hiking trails, camping spots. It's upstate New York is like
Yep.
it's awesome.
It's got it all, and the weather is not too bad either, right? You get some hot summers, and depending on or maybe some cold years, but overall, right? Like you're saying, springtime through the fall is probably pretty spectacular, right? Perfect.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, because you're up
Yeah.
in the mountains too. So the summers, we might get like 1 week where it's hot and humid. But
Yeah.
other than that, you get the nice cool nights, you get the nice mornings, and
Right.
typically it's just really comfortable. It's a great place.
Yeah, and you're not too far. The other cool thing is you're not too far from the Great Lakes. I mean, we've talked a lot about Lake Ontario, of course, Lake Erie, south shore of Lake Erie. I mean, you could, if you wanted to, drive out there and hit some of
Oh
that, or
yeah.
all the
You're
steelhead. Yeah.
you're like 2.5, 3 hours from the Salmon River. And then you have all the western trips to Lake Ontario. You got the Finger Lakes for landlocked Atlantics and all that good stuff.
Right.
And that's just the east or western side of New York.
Oh yeah.
Haven't even gotten into the Adirondacks. Like that's just another beast on its own with all the hiking and fishing and everything up there.
And where are the Adirondacks from Roscoe?
So it would be northeast.
Okay, yeah, northeast. So yeah, and the Adirondacks are in New York as well.
Yep. It's like Great Sacandaga Lake and the Ausable River.
Oh, and the
Uh,
Ausable, sure, sure.
yeah, and all those
That's
the
right.
like 46 high peaks and stuff like that.
Yep,
The, I've explored the Adirondacks a little bit, but I'd like to get up there more and do stuff, 'cause
that's really cool.
I've only done the western part of New York so far.
Yeah,
That's where my dad always took me. That's where I've kind of
yeah,
stuck.
the Western,
Yeah, I'd like
right?
to branch out and get out see some new places.
Sure. Have you looked at, thought about heading up into Canada at all to the, I mean, you could drive up to, I mean, it's pretty far, but you've got some stuff up there, right? Atlantic salmon and some other brook trout and
Oh
stuff like
yeah,
that.
Labrador. Yeah, and Labrador brook trout. That's a dream of mine.
Yeah.
My big dream is to get out to Iceland
Oh,
someday
Iceland.
though.
Yeah.
I would love to go to Iceland for those sea run brown trout, the Arctic char.
Yeah, in the Arctic char.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's a big dream of mine. But yeah, I do. I'd love to go to Canada. British Columbia is a
Yep.
bucket list. South America. I
Right.
like to travel. I like to see new places.
There you go. Yeah, there's a ton. It's cool to have a home state because, like you said, you got lots of stuff just where you are. But yeah, there's lots out there to do as well. Well, let's take it out here just with a quick little 3 tip segment. So we talked a lot about that area. Let's just go back to the winter. Let's say somebody is there. It's late February, maybe it's early March. It's not. It's warmed up a little bit, and there's fishing. What would be 3 tips you give somebody maybe who's new or who's been struggling to catch fish out there in the winter? What would you be telling them?
you know, Play with your nymph depth. If you're not taking bottom, make it a little deeper. 3 inches, 3 inches, 3 inches. Get it right near the bottom. If you don't get a fish on that first cast through the perfect first cast, give it 10 more. Like fish that area. Give it the time of day. Don't just keep walking one cast, keep walking. Really, really fish it because that fish, he could be swimming around real slow, coming up to a spot for some reason he might not see it or might not want it on the first 2 or 3 passes. I can't tell you how many times I've casted 10, 13 times in the same spot and 14th cast, bam, I get
Yeah,
a nice fish,
there you go.
you know? And then just keep playing with your flies. Don't be scared to try an attractor fly. Always, and I'd say go small,
And go
you know,
small.
use small flies. Yeah.
So small being, like you said, don't mess with. So we're talking 18, 16, or not. Is 16 small enough?
Yeah, I'll use a 16 on jig hook. 16 would probably be the smallest I'll go. Once we start getting into April and stuff, I'll start using larger nymphs because then the larger bugs are getting ready to start making their migrations and getting ready to start hatching. So I'll start upping my nymph size. And then once we get into the heat of the summer, I'll start going back down again.
And then back down. Okay. Yeah, those are all awesome tips. Perfect. So So good. Well, I've got just a couple random ones, and then we'll take it out of here. So always love to get a little random mix of music from this. But what is are you when you're on the road traveling around with your new boat? Are you listening to more podcasts or music when you're on the road?
If it's a long road trip, I like podcasts. If I'm just like running up to Roscoe or something, people might not know the radio station, but 101.5
Okay.
WPDH, it's like a classic rock. They have a funny talk show in the morning.
Is it WPDH?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
That's just what I listen to on the way up the road. That's what me and my dad always listen to.
So you got some morning. This is great. So you got some morning talk radio going, and I love that. What are the DJ, or what are they doing there? Who are these guys?
Oh man,
girls?
they're funny. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah.
It's the stuff they talk about is good. They give you the information for like the area, like the Hudson Valley and stuff like that, where I'm from. And then they have people call in, and it's just funny. The people that call in, it just keeps me engaged while I'm on the road.
That's awesome. Have you ever called in on any of that stuff?
No.
No.
No,
That's
I'm not that kind of guy.
Not your style. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the first podcast I've ever done.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
you're branching out right now.
Totally. Yeah, you're doing it now. This is bigger than calling in. I think this is like I'm not sure how many people WPH gets out to, but I'm guessing it's probably a lot because this is out in New York, a New York station.
Yeah, it's been around forever. I've been listening to it with my dad since I can remember. Maybe not the same host, but they've been there forever. And
love it. Well, in this day and age, the nice thing is I think you can pretty much get any station from anywhere now. So we'll look up some 101.5 in classic rock. What is if you had to pick one group, person, band, song from classic rock, what would that be?
Oh man, that's tough.
Yeah.
That is tough.
Are you more like 70s, 80s? I guess 80s now is classic rock, right?
Yeah, I guess now, but I'm like all over the board, I like Tom Petty, AC/DC,
okay,
Leonard Skinner,
Skinner, yeah,
stuff like that. But then I also listen to my girlfriend likes the new stuff, so when she's in the car, she plays her playlist.
What would be something new?
She likes Mexican music.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I don't know any like specific artists per se.
Sure.
But I do go to concerts with her, take her to
cool.
concerts and stuff.
There you go.
So
yeah, Mexican. I definitely love that. I just don't know of any band. The cool thing is we can go to Spotify right now and probably put in Mexican music or whatever and get some tunes. So so good. So we'll do. And what about a podcast? What do you listen to? What would be one podcast you might listen to?
Oh, I like your guys' podcast, Wet Fire Swing. I've listened to that quite a bit. I listen just on the road. Throw on a murder podcast or some true crime stuff, or
true crime.
Just a random, podcast about cars or something like that. Just something to listen to. Really.
Oh right, yeah, cars like building or working on cars, stuff like that.
Yeah, just or like just a random like deep sea fishing podcast.
Sure.
Just like anything to keep the mind moving, learn some stuff.
Yeah, good. Nice. Well, this has been good, John. I think this has been a lot of fun. I think we could probably leave it there today, and we'll be in touch for sure because the plan is to get out in that part of the world. I've been close in New York, but haven't ever actually trout fished out there. So I'm hoping to put that together in the next year or so. But yeah, thanks for all your time today. This has been a lot of fun, and we'll send everybody out to, I guess, like you said, John's Catskill guide service on Instagram. Is that the best place to send people?
Yeah, or Facebook.
Or Facebook, okay.
Yep, that'd be perfect.
Okay, and then we'll also put a link out to trouttownflies.com with Joe's shop and the place you're working for there. But yeah, thanks again. This has been amazing, and really appreciate you shedding all your kind of wisdom and insight on the Catskills, and we'll be in touch soon.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. We hope to see you out there.
All right, your call to action today is check in with John. You can do that right now on Instagram, John's Catskills Guide Service, or at trouttownflies.com. Check in with John and let him know you heard this podcast. And if you want to get a trick, check in with him right now. Sounds like an amazing place to start. All right, two things before we get out of here. Just want to remind you, Togiak is going strong. Togiak Week, Togiak Fishing Alaska. If you're interested in this trip, check in with me, Dave at wetflyswing.com, and put Togiak in the subject line. I'll let you know if we have any availability. We have a few spots we should still have left as of this episode, and let me know. This is going to be chasing Chinook and salmon up in Alaska at this amazing lodge, Togiak River Lodge. Okay, And the next episode you also don't want to miss this week is round 2 with Tommy Lynch. This is on Wednesday this week. We're going to be digging back into Streamer Days. Streamer episode number 2 with Tommy Lynch. Don't miss that one. Click subscribe so you get updated when that episode goes live in 2 days from right now if you're listening to this one live. All right, I got to get on. We got a Stillwater episode coming up soon, so I'm going to go work on that one. But appreciate you for stopping in today and checking out the show. Hope you have a great morning, great afternoon, or great evening, wherever you are in the world. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.